Good evening. I get the feeling this evening that you and I may not be the best of buddies when we start. And that's fine. My goal this evening is to cleanse you of the demons that plague you, keep you awake at night. And these demons are, to a large extent, part of you. Because of that, at least here in the nascent stages of our relationship, there will be some resistance at first, and with time, I hope, your defenses will relax somewhat, allowing me to access the core of your problems, to wit, the aforementioned demons in your head. Now, before you accuse me of trying to accuse you of possessing something which is unnatural or deviant in any way, rest assured, every one of us comes with a head chock full of demons, and it's ironic that often those of us who have learned to best tame those demons are the ones who are left stuck with a lifetime of comparatively, I don't even want to say comparatively trivial, but comparatively trivial, I guess I am going to say it, ill effects. If your inner demons compel you to jump off the top of a building, you're not going to be around for very long. If your inner demons compel you to sleep poorly, you might very well suffer those demons for the long and full life. But things can always get better. Thus, me here, and thus you there. And thus, the two of us together will attempt to quiesce the impish, perhaps, rather than fiendish demons that are bouncing around inside that skull of yours. Skulls. One might think that all skulls are the same. Perhaps one has a slightly more or less protruding forehead, a bonier jaw, more teeth. But these are relatively minor differences in life. Now we can, of course, use skulls in lots of different ways. It creates things of, one might even say, beauty from them. Although perhaps Well, beauty is subjective now, isn't it? So, I happen to think this is quite beautiful. You may have a different view, and that's fine. As long as you don't agree with me in any way, then you're still plagued by demons. Once we are in complete accord, then I will be able to proclaim you free of said demons. How do demons get their power? Well, there are many demons, many different ways in which they go about procuring the power that they need to have over their subjects, even their familiars. But I think if we start at the beginning, we might begin to see a pattern into how demons get their power. And of course, were you around in the 80s, or a child of the 80s, you might be familiar with the interstitial public service announcements in the guise of G.I. Joe, where between extremely violent cartoons they would try and teach you a bit of a moral in about 30 seconds and pronounce at the end, "And now you know." And knowing is half the battle. Is knowing half the battle? Maybe. Maybe on average, knowing is half the battle. There are certainly cases where knowing is the entire battle. There are cases where knowing doesn't make much difference. So perhaps it's just a nice compromise to say that generally knowledge is going to help you, and therefore knowing is half the battle. It's pithy, easy to remember, gets the point across, which is know your enemy, of course. And whether it's completely factually accurate, maybe that's just not so important. Nevertheless, in the case of demons, I would argue that knowing is very important. Case in point. Two rather equally innocuous songs, earbugs, perhaps neither of them classics in any sense other than their ubiquitousness, but both of them interesting. Sammy Davis Jr.'s Candyman and Van Halen's Ice Cream Man. If we take a look at the lyrics of both of these songs, you'll soon see that in one, and this may seem like it is just for the purposes of the rhyme scheme, just for the purposes of artistic license, I find more meaning in this fact. But you'll see that in one, to wit, Ice Cream Man, the name Ice Cream Man is only invoked 2 times in a row. In Candyman, the name Candyman is invoked 3 times in a row. I'm your ice cream man. Stop me when I'm passing by. I'm your ice cream man. Stop me when I'm passing by. See now, all my flavors are guaranteed to satisfy. 2 times. The Candyman can. The Candyman can. The Candyman can because he mixes it with love and makes the world taste good. 3 times. Now, with a little further digging, it would be easy to conclude the truth behind these invocations. Van Halen is not that far, derivatively speaking, from Van Helsing, which, as we all know, Bram Stoker took the name Van Helsing from an actual demon hunter. So, Edward Van Halen and company had a working knowledge through their familial ties with demonology. Therefore, when writing Ice Cream Man, they knew that it was a horrible idea to say the name Ice Cream Man 3 times in a row. Sammy Davis Jr. did not have any such lineage-based advantages in regards to demonology. And therefore, he unwittingly put Candyman 3 times in a row. I think we all know from the chaos that ensued at many a sleepover and even immortalized in books and cinema, the terror that was unleashed by this seemingly innocuous 3rd consecutive utterance of the name of the demon Candyman. You don't hear many stories about the demon Ice Cream Man in being passed on from generation to generation, or being told by kids on the schoolyard to each other. And what better a vessel were there such a demon to access young impressionable minds than a demon Ice Cream Man? Arguably, certainly, in modern times, more effective than a Candyman. Typically, you have to go to the Candyman. The Ice Cream Man comes to you. And so we see in these 2 ditties, Ice Cream Man and Candyman, how just one more utterance of a name caused decades of strife and horror. And that is, on its own, a very good example of how knowing is half the battle. Why do names matter as much as they do to demons? I'll explain that to you in a moment here. First, I'd just like to open up my lament configuration box. Yes. And remove from it a replica of another demon from popular culture. Yes, this is the head of Pazuzu. Now, you all will likely remember Pazuzu as the demon that inhabited the unfortunate Regan in the movie The Exorcist. But there is truth in all things. And Pazuzu was not a creation of William Peter Blatty, but simply a cinematic expression of the demon. One might think the name a bit ridiculous. Pazuzu? Ice Cream Man? Candyman? They don't sound very threatening. And it is in this ability to fly under the radar. That's one way in which demons derive their power. So in The Exorcist, the demon Pazuzu took over the body of the innocent Regan and had to be exorcised as if a devil by Catholic priests. One might scoff at this notion. I would argue that there are many sins to be found in cinema, as well as in the world of demons. And perhaps Pazuzu not being present in The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, was almost as horrible as a sin as Pazuzu inhabiting Regan in the first part of The Exorcist. At least part 1 gave us a watchable 90 minutes of horror. The second one, I don't bring up the third one. Some of you may not even be aware of its existence. There is a third Exorcist, technically. The Exorcist Part 3 was originally based on a story by William Peter Blatty called Legion. And had it not been for studio heads pushing their influence to try and attach the name Exorcist to another movie, that film would have been released with no connection to The Exorcist whatever. The Exorcist 3 is largely a story about a serial killer who has died and yet seems to be killing again. The transparently shoehorned link to the Exorcist series was clearly last-minute, perfunctory at best, and did nothing to improve the movie itself, although I would say that The Exorcist 3 is worlds better than The Exorcist 2, even if only for a single scene down a hospital hall that stays perfectly steady for almost 2 full minutes, lulling you into a false sense of boredom, anxiousness. You can actually feel yourself going through these stages as you watch the scene, initially certain that something's going to come out and give you a fright. And as more and more time goes on, you start to question that. You start to think, was this an editing mistake? You start to think, get on with it. So when the final reveal, which I will leave unrevealed, occurs, it has that much more impact. A rather brave piece of filmmaking, and one that I can recall terrified a young version of myself many years ago. In rewatching it recently, I found that it still contained a lot of power. But there you go. The movie does not really have any connection with the series, The Exorcist, and no connection at all with the demon Pazuzu. But names are powerful things. Back you go, my friend. So, it stands to reason that it would be incredibly useful for one battling demons in their own head to be aware of the names of those demons. After all, if you look at the etymology of the word demon, previously daemon spelled D-A-E-M-O-N, and previously to that daemon, D-A-E-M-E-N, and previously to that demon, D-E-M-A-N, and you reverse those letters, you have the word named, as pointed out in the trial of poor condemned Elizabeth Gadge, the witch. And thus, names are extremely important. So how, you might ask, do I find out the names of the demons that live in my head? If the name of the demon will give me power over it, this would be extremely useful information. And admittedly, information that the demons themselves would not want getting into anyone's hands. And yet, it stands to reason that eventually demons' names will get out. That Pandora's box, or a sort of inverted Pandora's box, would only have to happen once. And you would have an entire pantheon of demons, their names revealed, powerless, unable to prevent you from obtaining the sleep that you need, much less inducing you to jump off the top of a building. Demons are extremely intelligent. More intelligent than you or I. And this intelligence would put them in good stead in trying to figure out a way in which their names could be forever a secret. Or to be more specific, that their names would be either unwillingly or willingly suppressed, even, and this is the key points because they foresaw this happening, even if those names were to get out. How does one do this, you might think? Well, the intelligence, especially the pooled intelligence of these demons, led them to devise a most cunning plan, as wise Baldric would say. And their plan was this: our names will eventually become known to everyone. We cannot prevent this from happening forever. We can prevent it for a time, but eventually it's going to happen. Our names will get out. Armed with those two facts, they then probably convened some sort of demonical conclave in the depths of pandemonium, where you had to be there in person. There was no zooming into this particular meeting. It was likely quite warm. Sweaty pits in the sweaty pit of hell. And there they discussed what they could do to offset the inevitability of their names becoming known. And the solution was to discredit the validity of the names, therefore making anyone who would think to invoke those names an object of ridicule. So much so that people would actively decry any sort of spread of this information as disinformation. Fake news, if you will. So, with that plan in mind, all that remained was for them to figure out a vector. And yes, those demon skulls, the ones that have had skulls, pondered this for quite some time before finally arriving at their demonic, cunning conclusion. They would deliver their information into the hands of the makers of games. These game makers who were creating fantasy worlds wherein such demons were real would use the names that came to them, unbeknownst to them, directly planted into their brains by the actual demons that in their minds were maybe loosely based on mythology, history, lore. Little did they know that there was more than their own imagination and knowledge of history guiding their collective pens when they created Dungeons and Dragons. Who would believe, hiding in plain sight amongst things like owlbears, unicorns, dragons, purple worms? Who would be so foolish as to think that one could find the true names of demons in a tome such as this? A stroke of genius. And yet, open this tome, and there is an entire section devoted not only to demons and their names, but their weaknesses, their strengths, how to get them to appear, how to defeat them. All of this information relegated to a game that, for a time, was ridiculed, and those who played it were nerds and geeks. Little did they know they possessed knowledge far beyond that contained within the Necronomicon, the Kabesh. And so, hiding in plain sight for all to see, to the point where one of these, in fact, the prince of all demons himself, was named and portrayed in an extremely popular series on Netflix. Demogorgon himself, as pictured right here. Dual simian heads, tentacles, and all. And so, you don't even need to get the original one of these. There are plenty of editions of Dungeons & Dragons books, monster manuals describing real-life demons like Demogorgon, who interesting. He's 95% resistant to magic. Now, that's useful information. I would argue that in battling Demogorgon, knowing is not even a quarter of the battle. But there would be no battle at all if you did not have some of this knowledge. To wit, rivalry between demon lords is great, but the enmity between Demogorgon and Orcus is immense and unending. Right there, you have been given a key piece of information that the demon prince Demogorgon and the demon prince Orcus are nemeses. The demon prince Orcus is detailed on the opposing page. It would be quite easy to use this information to your advantage. Demogorgon possesses great powers in his two heads. Should he fix the gaze of both upon his enemies, he's able to hypnotize. Right there again, another extremely useful piece of information. If you are to encounter Demogorgon, don't catch the gaze of both of his heads. Demogorgon is also able to lash his forked tail, striking with it as a whip-like weapon. Its touch causes energy drain from 1 to 4 levels, the tail striking as a flail for hit determination. I suppose there is not a whip for hit determination, so that would certainly be more appropriate if there was. Some of these details, things like hit dice, levels, the nomenclature of the Dungeons & Dragons oeuvre, might not be applicable. After all, what level are you? How many hit points do you have? What's your armor class if you're wearing jeans and a t-shirt as opposed to a welding apron? Nevertheless, much of the information is still quite useful. The tentacles are also deadly weapons, each causing 1 to 6 hit points of damage. Again, the exact numbers probably not valid. I have a feeling were you to get a Demogorgon tentacle in the face, that would be it. But there are interesting things here. characteristics and abilities which all demons have in common. Demons are able to move from their own plane into those of Tartarus, Hades, Pandemonium, or Rome, the astral plane. So even if you are floating about, connected by a silver string to your corporeal form, you might run into a demon amongst the clouds. They cannot enter the material plane without aid. So we are safe. Of course, what does aid mean? And with that, we go back to things like invocation, conjuration, singing songs like Ice Cream Man or Candyman. Demons are chaotic and evil. The smarter and stronger rule those of their kind who are weaker and less intelligent. So it is a brute force dictatorship of sorts. The less intelligent demons will attack without question and fight until slain. There is no subduing a demon. It's useful information to know. If you're engaged in melee with a demon and you think you might get the better of it and want to ply it for information, you are out of luck. No demon can ever be subdued. Demons will never willingly, key differentiator there, willingly, serve anyone or anything if forced to serve through magic or threat. They will continually seek a way to slay their master/captor. And who wouldn't? Those to whom demons show a liking are typically carried off to the demon's plane to become a slave, although a favored one. Note that demons can be summoned by characters of any alignment. So, the road to hell or Pandemonium, Hades, can be paved by good intentions and good alignments alike. Note that, yes, okay. So demons can be summoned by characters of any alignment, but controlling a demon, that's another matter entirely. A thaumaturgic circle is required for demons type 1 to type 5, but a special pentacle, not just a regular pentacle, a special pentacle, is required for demons of type 6 or greater. What else? What other useful bits of information can we get from this book? Well, demons' amulets. Need I come back over here? Once again, those of you who have seen the movie or read the book, The Hellbound Heart, the movie Hellraiser, know the importance of the lament configuration box. But a demon's amulet representation or linked object like the lament configuration turns out these things are very important and a key vulnerability for many demons. To wit, demon lords and princes maintain their vital essences in small containers. their souls, so to speak, are thus at once protected and yet vulnerable. If some enterprising character should gain the amulet, demons with amulets are able to magic jar once per day. Now, I can't tell you how many of these details are accurate. I think the important thing here is we get the names, the vulnerabilities. I think once we get down to the level of the exact spells that can be cast, the number of times per day, what the actual spells even are, at that point we are probably better served by sources other than first edition Monster Manual. Demons' amulets cannot be detected as such by any magical means, and they do not otherwise appear unusual in any way. It could be anything. And one might think that a demon, much in the same way that they hid their names in plain sight, they would be probably likely to choose containers not as obvious as the lament configuration. They might choose, a stuffed frog. Now, this is not to be confused with a familiar, which would be either a living being that can be inhabited by or companion of another magical being. I'm just saying that if we take history as an example, if we were looking for demon amulets with which to capture or stop a demon from plaguing our nightmares or preventing us from even having nightmares, to wit, not allowing us to fall asleep, we would be better served looking to the innocuous, the nondescript, rather than trying to hunt down, arcane artifacts, ancient Mesopotamia. Could be anything. A shoe brush. Perhaps this is Demogorgon's amulet right here. Perhaps it's the Ice Cream Man's amulet. No way for me to know. More on amulets. If you possess the amulet, it gives you, possession of the amulets gives you power over the demon to whom it belongs for the space of, you see here it says, for example, one adventure. What does one adventure translate to in our lives day to day? Perhaps it's a week. I would think that that's probably a safe amount of time. An adventure maybe takes about a week, including travel and rest, and hotel accommodations, rental cars. There's a lot that goes into an adventure. Does that include pre-adventure setup and preparation? I don't know. It's probably best to err on the side of less time rather than more. But for the span of an adventure, the amulet must then be returned to the demon, or it can be destroyed and thus condemn the prince to abysment for a year, and he may return thereafter only if summoned. So you're kicking him back to his home, where he stays under house arrest until somebody puts on a Sammy Davis Jr. song. Let's see. Use of an amulet is very, very dangerous. I would think that goes without saying. However, probably bears repeating. After all, we are talking about the fate of our immortal souls. Possession of... Oh, this is interesting. If you possess a demon's amulet, you double the chances of calling the attention of another demon. Any demon not controlled by the device will immediately attack the person possessing such an amulet. So while demons are chaotic evil and seemingly have very little loyalty for one another, they do to some extent realize that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And if they catch any foolish mortals messing about with amulets, they're going to try and destroy those mortals. Probably both for the fact that they have the amulet and the fact that they have the knowledge and are therefore dangerous to more than just the demon whose amulet they possess. Fascinating. My goodness, if the amulet leaves the hand of the one commanding the demon will attack in the most effective fashion immediately, attempting his utmost to slay and then carry all that remains to his own domain. That is, the character is lost and gone forever. On the positive side, however, if the wielder of the amulet carefully repays the demon for the aid rendered, adds a considerable sum for having the temerity to dare to command the demon in the first place, and then carefully restores the amulet to the demon, the prince might not bear him a grudge forever afterwards, nor seek to hunt him out whenever possible. I know a bit about demons, not a whole lot. There are certainly many who know much more in the art of demonology than I do, but I wouldn't count on that last bit. I don't think that either reason or mercy are characteristics of any demon. Your best bet is to make sure you destroy the demon before he destroys you. Demons frequently roam the astral and ethereal planes. This we already knew. Their attention is also attracted by persons in an ethereal state. We knew this as well. If the name of a particularly powerful demon is spoken, there is a chance that he will hear and turn his attention to the speaker. Now we get to the nub of it. A base 5% chance is recommended to the referee / dungeon master / fate. 5%. What does that mean in real life? Unless prepared to avoid such attention or to control the demon will thereupon immediately kill, by whatever means are most expeditious, the one pronouncing his name. So, I think what we've uncovered here is the key way in which demons use, really, it's hubris of humanity, our want to ridicule that which we do not understand. They've turned that very thing against us to prevent us from taking seriously the knowledge which would allow us to conquer them inside our own heads. It's clever. It's, I would say, devilishly clever, but, devils have a whole separate section, and devils are lawful evil, not chaotic evil. They're much more prone to adhere to any pacts that they would make with you or with each other. I think if you are able to get a well, and this is the key part, well-groomed, I say that as I try and make this piece of hair lie down, a well-groomed pact with a devil, you'd probably be all right. I think that'd be fine. I'm not going on record here as saying that, to go ahead and do it, and I'm certainly not going to be liable if Asmodeus smites you because you didn't read the fine print. But if you had to choose between working with a devil or working with a demon, you're going to be better off working with a devil. And it's with that I would recommend picking up a monster manual or a similar tome. There are many, many tomes that cover the material we just talked about and more. And there are far more demons than are even listed in that particular manual. There are a lot of lesser demons that go unmentioned. But they are, by definition, the ones that cause, let's say, chronic irritation, chronic malfeasance, chronic annoyance. We are all susceptible to death by 1,000 cuts, and demons and devils, of course, have a very different interpretation of time than we do, and they might, whereas you and I might feel like, well, I won't get satisfaction unless it happens now. Demons may be thinking on a scale of decades, even more. Although, once we get into centuries, it's hardly germane to any individual mortal being's life anymore. So, know the names of the demons in your heads. How you figure out which demons are in your heads, I'm afraid that's outside the scope of this video. Perhaps we'll go into that another time. I can give you some suggestions. I think that if you pay very close attention to the kinds of thoughts that keep you awake, or the kinds of feelings that keep you awake, be they fear, be they a feeling of inadequacy or imposter syndrome, be they simply feeling like you don't deserve a good night's rest. You can look into the motivations and the types of things that would drive all of these thoughts and feelings, and you can then extrapolate from there the type of demon that might enjoy such suffering most. And from there, you go ahead and try and derive which demon enjoys which torment the most, and try a couple. Cast a wide net. Look for amulets around your house. And remember, you really think that, if you found something like this, that you'd be onto something, but you'd probably be wrong. Or probably looking for something more like this. Either way, I think this goes without saying. Be careful. And remember, you can't subdue a demon. So if it comes to fisticuffs, I wish you the best of luck. You can also just try sleeping pills.